Hello, I'm Angelina and welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how I cook rabbit in a tomato sauce that I will then serve with pappardelli, a nice wide pasta. It just has a terrific flavor with this rabbit sauce. We tend to eat chicken, beef, pork, and we don't consider meats like rabbit. And rabbit is a great alternative as it is a very lean meat and it's very tasty. So I'm going to show you how I prepare my rabbit sauce, and I hope you enjoy this. The very first thing we're going to do is we are going to put about 4 cups of onions into our pan here. And I am doing a whole rabbit, so it's going to be quite a bit. And I don't mind cooking rabbit because if we don't use it all up at the meal the next day, it's a great dish to heat up and serve again. So let's now put in our olive oil. And what I'm going to do is I am going to put enough olive oil in here, which may seem excessive, but I'm going to put enough olive oil over the onions until I see that they're almost covered. So it's going to be quite a bit. I'd say we're using about a half a cup of olive oil. So olive oil in there. Okay, and I'm going to turn on my burner and I'm going to let this simmer until the onions wilt and start to have a little bit of a golden color. We are going to take the rabbit and we are going to wash it, removing the marinade that it's been sitting in. And then we're going to set up another container with about a cup of red wine, and we will run the rabbit just quickly through that wine as we put it into the pan over the onions and let the rabbit start to brown. Our onions have been cooking for about 10 minutes and they have become quite limp and just a little bit of color has started on them. And I washed the rabbit out of the wine I marinated in, and I have prepared a little bit of fresh wine here. And the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add our garlic to the onions so that it starts to put out its flavors. Okay, and once that is done, I am going to take the larger pieces of rabbit. Now this is a thigh and it's quite large. And when I first put the rabbit into the wine, it was a white meat, but it's picked up the red wine color. So it's quite nice. So I'm just going to run it through the wine here, and I'm going to put it into the onions that have gotten limp and golden. So what we're going to do is we're going to brown the rabbit in the onions. What I'm doing is I'm taking all the larger pieces because they will need longer to cook, and so by doing them have a longer period of cooking. Now pieces like this is the rib cage. This will not take long, so I'm going to put that in at the very end, and we just want it to get a little bit brown before we put the tomatoes in. Over, let them brown on that side, and at the very end I have about 5 or 6 pieces, which are all the riblets, and I will put them in. Once those are all in, I will then add my tomatoes. I'll be using 8 plum tomatoes that I have in my deep freeze, and I brought them out. They're still frozen solid, and what I've done is I've run them under water for a second, and they just peel. So I'm removing the peel. And I'm going to cut off just this little stem part here because it usually has a little bit of a white pulp, and I don't want that in my sauce. So I'm going to do that to all of the tomatoes that I have, 8 of them. And they will be frozen when I put them into the rabbit. This is really cooking right now, and what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start churning some of the smaller pieces. You can see it's starting to brown. Now you can see I've used quite a large pan here for this rabbit. When you're doing a whole rabbit, you're going to need a nice big Dutch oven. I'm going to put a few more pieces in. So once everything seems nice and browned, I'm going to add my tomatoes. The rabbit is browned and ready now for me to add the tomatoes. And what I'm going to do, my tomatoes were frozen, and I'm just going to cut them up. They're still a little bit frozen, but we're just going to add them in like this. I've added all the tomatoes. I'm going to start mixing it so the tomatoes go down into the onions and start to melt. And this is going to create our sauce. And once that happens, everything will start to just blend together and bring out the beautiful taste of the rabbit. You want to make sure your big pieces are right into the sauce. The ribs and that, they cook very quickly, but the larger pieces, you have to make sure they're right down into the liquid cooking. So the tomato has cooled down all of the ingredients because they were partially frozen. And so what's happening now is the temperature's got to come back up, and when it comes back up, the tomatoes will really break down and give us this rosé sauce with the rabbit to cook in. Okay, I'm going to let it come up to temperature. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a fresh sprig of rosemary, and I'm just going to chop it up so it gets a little bit everywhere. Now is we're going to add our salt, and I add about 2 teaspoons of salt to this sauce. Now, salt is something that everybody has their own level of enjoyment. So some people like a lot of salt, some people like their food very bland. You can put in as much as you want. I do suggest a minimum of a teaspoon, but I put 2 in. So I'm just going to give it all a stir now so all of this, the salt blends down into the sauce. Now, what you can do is, once you see your tomatoes have all broken down and it's been cooking for a few minutes, you can give it a quick taste just to see if you feel your salt levels are good. And if they are, that's fine. If you need more salt, you can continue to add salt. And I would do it at this point so that the flavoring gets into the meat. Okay, so it's come back up to a fast rolling boil, and we're going to let it cook like this for 3/4 of an hour to an hour. Your meat, to know if it is ready, your meat should come off the bone very easily. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a taste to make sure my salt levels are good. Perfect. For me, this is perfect. 2 teaspoons. By the time it cooks and the meat soaks in some of the salty flavor, the sauce will be at perfect taste for me. But everybody's got to do it their own way. So when you do this recipe, give it a try. If you find that my measurements are a little bit too salty for you or not salty enough, then adjust it according to your taste. So now we're going to let it cook for 3/4 of an hour, and then I will test it to see if it still needs an additional 15 minutes or so. And then we'll be ready to cook our pasta and sit down to a great meal. So our rabbit's been cooking for about an hour and 10 minutes actually, because there were some really big pieces in here, so I had to make sure that it was well cooked. And you can see how lovely it looks. Everything has melted into the sauce, and I'm going to just check one of the pieces that is on the bone, and you can see it's coming apart. Okay, so the sauce is ready. We will taste it to make sure. Oh my goodness, it tastes so good. It is perfect for me as far as the seasoning. The salt is just perfect. The rabbit has collected some of the salt into its meat, so the balance is just perfect. So what we will do is we will put some water on to cook our pappardelli. Then we will put some of the sauce on the pasta, let it soak it in, and we will serve the pasta with our meat pieces all at the same time. And it is a great meal. You can see I've made quite a bit. Not worried about it. If we don't use this all up in tonight's dinner, it will be a great lunch for tomorrow or another dinner. And we'll just cook a little bit more pasta and serve it, and it will be just perfect. Actually, it may even be better because all the flavors have mingled together, and the flavor is even nicer. So please try this recipe and let me know how you like it. Subscribe to my channel, and let's meet again soon. Thank you.